What's up, guys? Welcome back to Rosie TV. It has been a long time since I've made a video, but I'm back, and I'm back permanently. Hopefully we'll be getting around two videos a week now. Also been doing something on the side, which is my Rosie wrestling channel. So my other passion in life, along with world football, is professional wrestling. So if you guys are interested in that, I will leave the description to the channel in the comment section below. But here, I'm back, and I'm going to talk about world football. We're going to be talking about the last 8 teams in the Champions League. So the quarterfinals, a draw takes place Friday morning, or at least Eastern time. So I'm going to be ranking the final 8 teams. But let's just go straight into this ranking. In 8th place, I'm going to have Roma. Now, Roma are a team that really struggled against Shakhtar Donetsk. They barely made it out of there. I think they won on away goals. But honestly, they've been very inconsistent in the Champions League. You look at the group of death this year. They had to face the likes of Atletico Madrid and Chelsea, and they got top of the group when no one really thought they would get top of the group. Obviously, they had that big 3-0 win over Chelsea, which was definitely the biggest upset, I feel, of the Champions League so far. And when looking at their team, their main threat, I have to say, has to be Edin Dzeko. You look at just the way he's been playing in the Champions League. He has 4 goals and 2 assists in the 8 games that he's played. So for me, he's the one to really watch. But when you look at Roma, I think any team they get paired up against, they will end up losing. They haven't really looked convincing at all. And now next, I'm moving on to 7th place, which is Sevilla, which a lot of people thought they wouldn't even make it to this final 8 in the Champions League. I mean, they were paired up against Manchester United, and Man United were the favorites. But after watching that first leg when it was 0-0, I really thought Sevilla were going to take home this tie because Man United were playing atrociously. And then also Sevilla, the reason why I have them over Roma is because of their European pedigree. I mean, you look at Roma, they're doing better in the Serie A, and Sevilla are kind of struggling domestically. But in Europe, Sevilla are just a different monster. You look at those 3 Europa League wins in a row from 2014 to 2016. And I know this isn't the Europa League, but still, the European atmosphere just brings out a different Sevilla side. And when looking at their main threats, Ever Banega, he's been really going under the radar. He's playing in a deep position now, really dictating play. And looking at his statistics, he has 1 goal, 2 assists, but just looking at his other statistics, like 3.6 key passes per game, 3.1 dribbles per game, he's putting up some elite numbers in the Champions League. Next, moving on to 6th place, I want to talk about Liverpool. Now, Liverpool, I don't remember the last time they were in a quarterfinal of the Champions League, but good for them. I mean, they've been playing fantastically. They're the top scoring team in the Champions League, but we have to be fair. Looking at their opponents, they haven't really went against anybody that convincing. Their Champions League group had the likes of Spartak Moscow and Maribor. Fair enough, they did face Sevilla and were really convincing against them, but they haven't went against one of the big Champions League monsters. But looking at their main threats, I have to say, I can't just look at one person here. You have to look at that whole attack. That attack has been absolutely fantastic. The likes of Firmino, Sadio Mane, and Mohamed Salah, who for me has been the signing of the season. Altogether, those 3 guys, 19 goals, 5 assists. Also on top of that, they're not known for the best defense, but when you look at their 2 games against Porto, they kept 2 clean sheets, which is, that's really respectable in the Champions League round of 16, where, the competition does escalate. But if they are going to lose, I think it's because of their defense. Now I'm going to move on to 5th place, Juventus. Now, Juventus last year obviously made the Champions League final, and they managed to choke in the final, losing 4-1 against Real Madrid. And this is definitely a different Juventus team, but I do still think they have that never give up mentality. They could be losing, it could look like it's all lost, but they're still fighting till the very end, and you just can't teach that. Their match against Tottenham, I honestly thought they weren't going to make it out, but they fought till the very end, and they managed to eliminate Tottenham. But I do think it was paper over the cracks, because at the end of the day, they still struggled against Tottenham, who aren't one of the stronger teams in the Champions League. Also, just looking at Juventus, one thing that they have in their favor is they want to right the wrongs of the 2 Champions League finals that they lost. Juve are known as chokers in the finals. I mean, they've made, I think, 7 finals that they've lost in their history. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And looking at the main threat, you could say Gonzalo Higuain, you could say Paulo Dybala, but I'm going a different route. I'm saying Giorgio Chiellini. Listen, we know Juventus are a defensive side, and Chiellini is kind of the last defender that Juve have, from that old guard. He's that leader of the defense. Bonucci is gone, he's at Milan. Bargiagli is old, and Buffon hasn't been the same this season. Chiellini, I feel, is the last guy that Allegri can really rely on in defense. They have Rugani, they have Benatia, but Chiellini is one of Juventus' best ever players, and I think that if he plays well, Juventus have a really good chance of making it to the semifinals, no matter who they go against. I will go on to 4th place, the current Champions League holders, Real Madrid. I know 4th place seems a little bit too high for them, but they have struggled this season. But when looking at a Champions League, they're still something else. They put it into a different gear when the Champions League starts. And really, the Champions League, this could save Zinedine Zidane's season. You look at him domestically, the league is already lost. Like, there's no doubt. The Coppa Italia is gone, the Copa del Rey is gone, and now the Champions League is really the final thing they're fighting for, and they really do have a good chance. But I do feel that their deficiencies are finally going to catch up to them in Europe as well, because you look at the league, they just seem to turn off at the most vital times against smaller teams. And while that hasn't happened against the bigger teams quite yet, in the Champions League at least, I do feel that it's going to catch up to them. But now I'm going to move on to 3rd place, and it's Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich are the sleeping giants in the Champions League. No one's talking about them because of their early group stage struggles. They lost that 3-0 game against PSG, and they were kind of in a transitional period. Ancelotti was struggling, and now you've brought in Jupp Heynckes, who knows what he's doing. And let's not forget, the last non-Spanish team to win the Champions League was Bayern back in 2013, I believe, and that was a Jupp Heynckes team. So he knows this team very well. They've been in fantastic form, both in the Champions League and in domestically. They're going to walk the Bundesliga, and they just absolutely demolished Besiktas in the round of 16. And for me, the key player to really look at is going to be Thiago Alcantara, who just came back from injury just a few weeks ago. And if he plays even half the way he played last year in the Bundesliga or the Champions League, teams are just definitely going to fear him, because he was just so good at gliding past players, creating chances, scoring the goal when he needed to, setting up his teammates. I mean, for me, I really thought he was one of the 3 or 4 best midfielders last year. Now moving on to the 2nd place team. Now, I never really thought I'd put this team in the 2nd place if you asked me like 2 or 3 years ago, because they're always a team that kind of struggled in the Champions League, but it's Manchester City. This might be Manchester City's year. You just look at the way they're playing in the league. They have 1 loss in the Premier League, that's really difficult to do in such a tough league like that. But also just looking at it in the Champions League, they've been very convincing. I know they just lost their 2nd leg game to Basel, but they absolutely destroyed them in the 1st leg, so they kind of took it easy. So I understand that. And let's not forget, they also have Guardiola, who knows this competition very well. He won it twice with Barcelona. He was a constant staple in the semifinal with Bayern. And yes, he had that hiccup last year when he got eliminated by Monaco, but he was still adjusting to Manchester City. It is difficult when you get a new team like that that really was never good in the Champions League historically. So now he's gotten them to play to his level. Everyone should really be avoiding Manchester City in that quarterfinal draw. I would not want to be the team to face this Guardiola side that has so much to prove. Next, 1st place, I really don't think there's any doubt. It has to be Barcelona. And this isn't a Barcelona who are just dispatching teams that aren't that good, lowly La Liga teams. No, this is a team that has been tested in the Champions League this season already. They beat they beat Juventus 3-0. They beat Chelsea 3-0 in that second leg. And on top of that, Barcelona were never really known as a great defensive team, but you look at it this year in the Champions League, they've only conceded 2 goals. And I think that's the scary part. Listen, you'll always have Messi playing fantastic, and that midfield, guys like Busquets, you know, they're always going to hold it down. But that defense this year has just been so good. And I do think if they're going to win the Champions League, it's going to be because of guys like Piqué and guys like Jordi Alba and Umtiti, because they have been at another level this season. But I do think what could be Barcelona's downfall is Suarez's poor form in the Champions League. We know Messi's kind of on a different planet compared to everybody else, but everyone is really lagging in terms of the goals department. Suarez has not really proven himself on the Champions League stage this season. I mean, you look at his 8 games, he has 0 goals. Yes, he has those 3 assists, but his main job is to be a goal scorer, and he hasn't been that in the Champions League. So that could be Barcelona's downfall, because if Messi isn't playing well and no one else is there to kind of pick up the slack, that could be the reason why Barcelona are eliminated. But I do feel they're the favorites this year, and I do think they're going to win the Champions League. But tell me, like I said earlier in the video, tell me what your rankings are for the Champions League. Tell me who you also want to win the Champions League. And like I said, if you want to check out my Rosie Wrestling channel, I'll keep that in the description box. Hopefully, you guys will see more videos from me in the future. This has been Safe from Rosie TV. Thank you for watching.